Hi, everyone. Uh, Thank you so much for joining. It's very nice to see people join from Argentina, Canada, US, Poland, Vietnam. And please let's keep the chat active. My name is Mary. I am the community manager at Readymag. And today we're launching a new format of online events called Made with Readymag. So we'll be inviting established designers and longtime Readymag community members to share talks on design, their career, and inspiration as well. And we're super happy to have the first one with Anton Repponen, an interaction designer with a career spanning over for 20 years, also winner of the Websites of the Year 2025, and someone who's been part of the Readymag community since 2013, which is basically the year that Readymag was founded. Anton has worked with many brands, world-class brands such as Google, Microsoft, Netflix, Sony, Balenciaga, Apple, sorry if I've already mentioned that, and many other brands. He is the former creative director of Fantasy Interactive, a global design agency, and currently Anton is leading design at Anton and Irene, which he co-founded together with Irene Pereira in Brooklyn, New York. So as I mentioned, the chat will be active the whole time. If you have any questions you'd like to ask Anton directly, there will be a chance to do so after the talk is over. Yeah, we'll open up the cameras and microphones as well. Let's keep the space safe and respectful for everyone during the Q&A. Thank you so much once again for joining, and I'm gonna pass the mic to Anton.
All right, thanks for the introduction, and thanks Readymag for having me here today. Thanks everyone for joining in. I've been looking at a chat. I've seen some people from Asia, Vietnam. Must be the middle of the night for you guys there, so thanks for staying up late. I see some people from the US, skipping work to watch the stream. Respect. Europeans, a lot. Well, they're always chilling, so nothing special there. It's like evening, just waiting for soccer. I'm gonna share my screen and hope it's going to work. All right, so my name is Anton. I'm a designer and co-founder of Anton and Irene Design Studio. I'm gonna introduce myself real quick, but just so you can get the vibes in terms of what type of work I do, I just want to play this quick video.
Anton, I think I can't hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Okay, so again, I think my mic was off. So I'm originally from Estonia, from Tallinn. That's where I grew up before moving out when I was 20, 21 years old. And I come from a family of pattern makers. Both my mom and my dad were making patterns for clothing their entire life, meaning figuring out how to cut the material that when you stitch together, it actually sits, on a person. And at the age of 6, I actually knew how to use a sewing machine and overlocks and all those things. So I could actually put together a pair of jeans from scratch. And I'm not exaggerating. Like I would go to my dad's factory and actually help him out to do some stuff and do things for myself. When I graduated school, and I graduated school in 2002, I went to study architecture because I thought that I want to be an architect. This is a side story, but maybe it's going to be helpful for someone. The reality is that I was a complete idiot by the time I was graduating school. I was not taking my life or career seriously at all. I just did not give a shit. At that time, I'm 18 years old. I graduated high school, and there are a couple of things. I knew exactly what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to become a doctor. I didn't want to become a lawyer. I kind of wanted to do something creatively, but I had no idea what design was. Because also growing up in the 90s in Estonia, first of all, interaction design as an industry, it exists today. It did not exist at all. So I couldn't even go and study that. And I barely had any idea what designers were doing because I didn't have a single friend who was a designer. All my friends went to study medicine, cargo shipments in or container shipments in a harbor, stuff like that. So architecture was the only one that kind of had the vibes of what I wanted to do. So that's when I went to study. But as I was studying architecture, I started doing some digital work, early online websites, and I found it amazing. And by 2005, I put together my first portfolio, and it got noticed by this company based in Stockholm, in Sweden, called FI. And they offered me a job as a designer, as an interaction designer. And I went there for interview. I was 21 at the time, and it seemed pretty cool what they were doing. And I remember very vividly because I moved to Stockholm in the summer of 2006 with just one backpack. I took a ferry from Tallinn to Stockholm. I went to work the moment I just got off the ferry. And I remember walking into the office of people working with these clients. I remember at that time, 2006, they were building MTV.com, they were building Ford.com, working with Time Warner, which is this like largest internet and media provider in the US. And for the first time in my life, I was like, holy shit, this is actually real work. Everything I've been doing before in terms of design was a Mickey Mouse show. It's just making some random websites for friends or clients in Estonia. But here, I saw people for the first time sitting on meetings, discussing over $1 million budgets, making plans, having developers building it and stress testing things. And back then, I had two jobs before. This was my third job. I'm 21, 22. And back then I realized, you know what? This is what I actually want to do because the problem was that I visually couldn't see. I couldn't meet designers who were doing that. Internet was early stages. YouTube, I don't think YouTube even existed at the time. So I was thrown into all of this client work right away. I lived in Stockholm for about 2.5 years until I got relocated to New York back in 2008 to continue working for the same agency because they opened up a new office in New York. I remember moving to New York in the summer of 2008, it was super hot. Bush was still the president, and it was 3 months before the financial crisis that happened later in the fall of 2008. And that's where I stayed. I stayed at this job for 9 years and I grew up into a creative director role. I was managing a design team across 5 different offices by the time I was leaving and just working with sometimes cool clients, sometimes clients that were quite boring, and just doing work for 9 years, building websites, interfaces, Xbox interface, working with Google on different products and websites, etc. And there's another thing that was going on in the background that's going to get relevant a little bit more in this lecture is that I was always taking photographs along the way. So, yes, I'm a designer by trade, that's my main specialty, but I've been taking pictures much longer than I've been designing because I got my first camera when I was 13 years old from a skateboarder friend of mine. And as long as I live, I always take photographs. I always have a camera with me. And this piece of information is going to get handy in the second half of this talk. So, architecture taught me to think spatially, the web taught me to think in feedback, and photography taught me to pay attention. Now, I'm going to talk about different types of work that I do. So, client work demands clarity. So, client work is when you're not allowed to make any mistakes. You have to be super organized. You have to plan everything. Studio work allows more drift. As a studio, we do a lot of non-client work, which is we come up with a larger project and spend quite some time building and launching it. And then personal work is where experimentation and unknowns take over. So as was mentioned, back in 2014, myself and Irene, we opened up a studio. We decided to call it after our names, Anton and Irene. And that's where we do most of all the client work that we do today. We will collaborate with museums, with artists, we publish books, we do a lot of self-initiated projects. So if I look at the type of work that I do, so there is a studio work, which is basically doing client work. We have a clients coming in and we have to figure out, how to deliver a project. There's studio initiated work, which is where we come up with projects, we think about them, we do research, and then we go into the mode where we actually design them, we build them, we launch them, and it takes a lot of time. But it's also, there's some learning curve there, but we have to figure out how to build it. And last piece of projects is completely random stuff. And that's what I enjoy doing a lot. And that's what I'm going to spend most of my time today talking about personal experiments, because this is the area where you actually dive into complete unknown without even knowing whether you can build something or not. And along the way, as I work across these three different pillars, it's important. The tools that you use are quite important. So the right tools shorten the distance between idea and experience. For example, since we're talking about Readymag, I do use Readymag in client work, but for slightly different purposes. For example, a couple of years ago, we've been working with this client, Mark Forged. It's a company based out of Boston, US, and they manufacture uh, large-scale factory-size 3D printers that can print in metal, in carbon fiber. You can print a Formula One piece, and it will work. And one of the things I was using Readymag for is to actually build prototypes of certain pages to describe the interaction to the client. So for example, in here, you can see actual prototype that I showed to the client that was built in Readymag. So I'm designing the project, and here I have a product page that I need to design. And very quickly, instead of sending just a JPEG or a PNG, because that page is quite interactive, I'm building it. It's going to take me maybe an hour to put it together in Readymag and just send the link. Clearly, when we build the project, we build it from scratch with custom code, just because there's a lot of different integrations happening. But the Readymag was helpful in presenting just one particular page. Here's another client of ours, and we spent 2 years working on a massive website for M Plus Museum. We did the website, the design language for the kiosks to buy tickets, the whole shebang. And there was one thing that we were discussing is whether we should be using breakpoints for the website or we should just scale entire website like a PDF document. And the client couldn't really grasp the idea just by me describing it. So I would open Readymag and I would export all the layers that I have in Figma while working on the project, throw it into Readymag and just send them the link explaining, look, this is how your website is going to scale across different resolutions. And then again, as a final delivery, of course, we build it from scratch as a custom front end, custom back end, the CMS, all the security, all the tickets purchasing. But Readymag was a nice tool just to prototype it very quickly. The right tools can cut time, costs, and friction of making. Back in 2000, I think 18, Um, we manufactured a watch. I came up with this design in 2010, and it was just a JPEG for a really long time. And it took me about 8 years to meet the right people who can help me manufacturing. But once the watch was done, we had to launch some kind of website where we could sell them. We only manufactured 500 pieces. And again, we spent so much money on manufacturing, on shipping, on working with the factories that just, spending more time and more resources on building a website would be completely crazy. The easiest way to do is in Readymag. So I spend about a day or two putting together this website on Readymag in which I just integrating buy now button that is plugged into Shopify. So when you click it, you actually go through a checkout process on Shopify. But the website itself that shows you the watch, that shows you how it works, all the features, it's just fully done in Readymag. And even our studio portfolio, which is antonirene.com, the homepage is custom. This is custom design, custom built, and we do have a custom CMS for it. So any moment I can go in and update any information on our homepage. But the moment you click on a project, I'm going to skip this video a little bit. The moment you click on a project, the actual case study is a Readymag page. So every single project page on our portfolio is a Readymag page. So basically, I maintain separate Readymag projects in Readymag where every time we have to build a case study, I build it in Readymag. And then I just simply integrate it through our custom CMS into our website. So the experience feels kind of fine. The URL does change from regular domain to subdomain, but it still works. And also the right tools let experiments become projects. Over the years, I realized that I have too many random JPEGs. I used to call them don't take these JPEGs seriously. They don't belong to a particular project. They're just random things that I come up with one way or another. And I couldn't have them in my portfolio because it's not a project. It's most of the time it's just one image. It's not a series of something. And they were just sitting on my hard drive until I realized, you know what? I can maybe put together an online museum. And I called it a Museum of Online Artifacts. And I built this project on Readymag as well, which essentially is just a long scrolling page with all those random experiments taking up one slide. Here's a bunch of play buttons from QuickTime organized in different shapes. And as you scroll, they form different compositions, for example. Or there is a running man from a game that I wanted to do one day. And again, it's just a scrolling experience. There's nothing, it's just crazy JPEGs that don't belong anywhere. But when they're put placed together, they kind of start to look very interesting. And just doing this thing, which I did, I think, in 2018, gave me an idea is that, well, why don't I put them together in a book? So every year, in December, I put together a book. So every year I just update it, but I did this book in 2020 and I put all this random JPEGs into this one book. It doesn't have any client work. It doesn't have any real projects where multiple people are engaged. I'm just taking up random stuff. I put it in a book and I print one copy. And then a year later in December, I gave this copy as a present to someone and I update the book with more work that I've done throughout the year and have a new copy for a year. And then the next year, I'll do over and over and over again. I know this book actually is one copy is somewhere in Switzerland, one copy is in New York, I think another copy is in Hawaii. So this December, I'm going to do another copy and I'm going to give the old one to someone as a present. I also use a lot of personal experimentation to learn new tools. For example, there was a moment when I tr wanted to try um, spline. So I came up with a project, I build it, but the reality is that this project just lives in spline. I cannot really share it with anybody. And again, I would just use Readymag to embed spline scene, take up the whole screen, and build a project, which is this abstract 3D comic book that is also working as a 3D scene that I can just, browse. Again, this is just for me to experiment and to try out new things. I don't consider it as a project. It's not like, I would really show it somewhere, But again, all those things later give me very cool ideas to do when I actually do client work. For example, there's a website that I did. It's a portfolio website that I did for friends of ours who are a development company based in Barcelona. So we collaborate with them when we build different things for clients and also for ourselves. And I remember when they came to me and said, "Hey, we want to redesign our portfolio." I remember I spent so much time thinking, okay, what is the portfolio of a development company should be? And I ended up with just having a standard portfolio with a grid of thumbnails of projects and then a list and then something else. And it's like, "Okay, I've seen this so many times. I need something else." And then I remembered about this comic thing that I did. It's like, you know what? Can that be a portfolio for a development company? And that ended up being this website, which is live today. You go there, it shows the name of the company. And as you scroll down, you can see that every project is presented as almost a floor in a building. You can click on it, you can zoom in, you can browse. And I remember it's such a simple trick. I think I spent about 2 weeks just thinking about getting to this idea. And then I only spent 2 hours designing the entire portfolio because the idea was already there. And the reality is that I would have never come up with this idea if if I didn't do that comic thing at the very beginning. So the three pillars, and you can see how the right tools can actually speed up your process and allow you to do things and actually move forward. But today I want to talk mostly about this very last column, which is personal experiments, because at the end of the day, I find it the most exciting stuff to do because no one else is involved and I can do whatever crazy stuff I want. And I don't care whether somebody wants it or not. All I care is about whether I like doing it. So personal projects can begin in many different ways. And today I want to focus on two. One starts by making, and the other starts by looking back. By making. So some projects begin with a brief, some begin with exploration. Not everything has to start with a clear goal. And to be honest, this particular statement is that the project can start without a clear goal is very counter design because design is goal oriented. Design as a discipline is inherently goal oriented and efficiency obsessed. But some of the most interesting work can start outside of that. When I talk to my friends who are designers, a lot of time I hear that if you designing something without a goal, it's not design, it's art. Honestly, I don't really care how it's being labeled, but the reality is that a lot of cool shit can happen when you actually don't have a goal and you just start working and all you have to do is observe where it takes you. That's pretty much it. And one of the example I want to show today is this one. Maybe some of you have seen it. It's me talking about this project, but it's going to become relevant, I promise you. So this photograph is not mine. That's a photograph by a photographer, and his name is Marcos Brunetti. And what Marcos did is he traveled around Europe taking photographs of cathedrals. And I remember seeing his exhibition here in New York, and when I looked at it, I just could not understand how the hell he managed to capture this building without distorting the perspective. I was like, this looks so nice and so clean. Because if you take this picture on the eye with the iPhone, it's gonna look all distorted. How he managed to keep these lines very straight. The funny thing is that I tried to research any type of interviews from Marcus where he would describe his process, no information whatsoever. So I started as like, okay, I'm gonna experiment. I'm gonna try and find out how can I do something like that. So I jump on my bike and I started going around New York, just taking photographs of buildings and then coming back home and trying to figure out what can I do to fix the perspective of the building. For example, here you can see Marcel Breuer building, which used to be Whitney, and then it used to be the Met for a little while, and now it's one of this art auction headquarters. On the left, it's an original image, and on the right is me trying to figure out how I can kind of fix that perspective. The reality is that no matter what you do, there's always the surface is visible. So the higher the surface is, the more that information is being kept on their original image. So it doesn't really matter how I stretch. These pixels are always there. They're baked in. So I start getting kind of this weird artifacts, and I'm not sure if I like them or not. And that's also when my kind of background as an architect comes handy because I know how these facades are being drawn when, architects are planning this building. And when you look at the facade from the architecture drawing, it has no elevations. It just basically looks like a cube. And then I started thinking, well, what if I remove and try to match the photograph to what architect had drawn on the blueprint? And that also looks pretty crazy. It doesn't look realistic at all. It looks pretty bad. And this experimentation was going on for about half a year, just on and off. Like on the weekend, I would take some pictures. Here's the new museum on Bowery. I would come back home. I would start fixing the perspective. I would find the original technical drawings of that building by the architect and try to match the proportions to the building. Obviously, I would want to get rid of, the bookshop that's on the first floor. I want to get rid of a lot of different things just to make that building look a little bit more clean. And then at some point, the building is like, well, what if I take this building out of context, the same way architects, drew it on paper? And that's another thing. It's just it doesn't look great. It looks like, somebody just cut out a building from the background and it looks kind of bad. At the same time, I went to visit my friend. We went to school together in Estonia, but he lives in Hawaii for the past 20 years. And I remember visiting one of the volcanoes and taking lots and lots of images. And then by the time I got back to New York, I decided, well, what if I replace this backdrop of New York with this volcano image that I just took on Hawaii? I can also get rid of that road and, the observatory, so it looks completely deserted, as if someone built a building on Mars or on the top of a mountain. And it's kind of weird. How would you get ever to this museum being isolated like that? And only now I saw that this can be a project. So you can see that it was just half a year of random things on and off, making one step, seeing it look bad, making another one, and then making one step that felt like the next step. It's like, you know what? This can actually be a project. And I obsessively started taking photographs of buildings in New York and trying out different techniques to kind of merge the building together and then isolate its environment and introduce a brand new environment. So that suddenly just became a project. There's another example. It's a Cooper Union. It's a school in New York. And the road was under construction for a year. Nothing would ever get done. The building is so close to the road that it doesn't even fit into the lens. So I had to take 6 individual images. And then I'm using the software to kind of merge everything together. That takes forever, where you just point out, pixel on image number one, matching this pixel on image number two. And then you go all night just like pointing out all the pixels until you get 6 images stitched together. And the tree is still coming through, the construction is still there, so that needs to be reworked so the tree can be gone. And then the construction takes forever to do, so I'm trying to find a way how to kind of skip time redrawing the lower part of the building. I place it into this landscape, which I took in Costa Rica, another volcano. And then you can see the construction is still there. Like I spent so much time cleaning up this building that basically I'm looking at another several days worth of work, just clean up this part. And then at some point, it's like, you know what? Like, fuck it. I'm just gonna stretch it just to cover it with a hill and then call it a day. And the reality, you can see how much work is being done on every single corner. So basically, that kind of got merged. And then that went on and on. It's like it's a long process. There's the Guggenheim Museum, and all those cars are being parked there uh, all day, all morning. It's impossible to take a picture without this. Also, 3 images, and here's stitched together and kind of hidden behind the rock in another landscape that I took someplace else. And very slowly, I ended up with 11 images. And the reality is that the problem was it was just a JPEG. The reality is that it took so much time to make each one of them. that having them just a JPEG that I can post on Instagram was kind of ridiculous. So I decided to put together to make a home to kind of show them all together. But showing an image gallery is also not that interesting. So I collaborated with a friend of mine who is a writer, John Earl, and I gave him 11 images and said, can you write an extremely short story about every single image? And you can actually make it kind of insulting if you want to. So do whatever you want. Let's just create this project. And I created that home using Readymag as well. So basically it takes very little time just designing something and launching it very, very quickly. And that was the final piece, which is basically a website that presents you 11 buildings all by themselves with a very short story by John Earl that wrote for every single building. And this obsession of just taking photographs and fixing perspective, it was just for me. I had no idea whether people like it or not. I had no way of validating it. I just liked doing it. I liked the result. And the moment the website launched, it started getting a lot of traction. Design Boom published one article, and then very quickly, Saatchi Gallery reposted it. And then a moment later, the Whitney Museum also linked to that article. And then it's funny that Whitney Museum was also misplaced from New York as one of the images, but they used the image of Guggenheim instead. And very, very quickly, it's just basically started spreading out. I started getting calls, and literally, I had a call with CNN, I had a call with Wired, I had a call with Guardian. They would call me and they would ask me, what's the story behind the project? The reality is that nobody is interested in what I just told you. No one wants to read an article about how I was obsessed with corrective perspective and taking images and cutting them out. Like that's some designer stuff. So when all these news outlets were interviewing me, some of them were over the phone, I actually made up totally different stories for every single one of them. To the CNN, I said, I'm an architect and I'm interested in how the building would look out of context. Does context change the building? Done. For The Guardian, I would say, the architecture in New York, what would happen if you remove the known architecture from New York? Would New York really ch change? So for every single one of them, I gave totally different answers, like artisty stuff, because nobody was interested in just, this is me testing out with my camera and correcting perspective. So this project kind of lives, but in a different mode. Every time I go and travel, or every time I see a building, and as I said, I have a camera with me, I always take a photograph of the building. And on my website, I have this hidden section called facades, which is by now maybe 500 or 600 images of different facades that I just capture around the world. No one looks at this page. I never advertise it. I just know it's there, and I like that it's there. But the most important thing here is that the moment you start doing something and then you pay attention to the outcome of what you do, you don't need to have a goal. It's just one thing leads you to the other project. So one experiment can open up the next. So in here, uh, that's the same building that I showed you. So it started as taking photographs. Sorry, someone's trying to call me. It's a photograph of the Breuer building, and then the Breuer building is being misplaced. And then the other thing that I started experimenting with is completely distorting the facades of the building by stretching pixels, but trying to keep that building still recognizable. And that led me to a completely different project, which I started back in 2021, 22, and I'm kind of done with it, but more or less, which is called Time Stretched, which is a way of trying to visualize the passage of time. So I take these photographs. This is Hong Kong. On the left, we have Tokyo. On the right, we have Bangkok. And then I take these photographs, I take these scenes, and then I spend a lot of time manually kind of redrawing every element by stretching the pixels to get this abstract visualization. By default, it looks completely broken into pieces, but when you step far away, you actually get to see again the facades kind of coming through. You can kind of understand what's going on. So This is the scene from Kyoto. This is the one from Tokyo. And again, I had no idea whether people are going to like it or not. I like that stuff. It looks cool. I really, really like doing it. And then a friend of mine told me, well, you should submit it for the TDC awards. I submitted this project for the TDC, even though it's a graphic design award, and there's not much graphic design going on here. It's like a distorted photography. And it didn't win, but it was one of the finalists, and it got exhibited in Tokyo at the TDC award show last year. And it started getting more and more traction as well. So again, that was not my intent to do that stuff. It's just then people find it on my website or, somebody shares and they reach out to me because they want to publish it. So since this project is going on, it's been published in over, I guess, 20 different publications. Harvard Business Review is the last one that just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's been on the cover of photography magazines in China, in Germany, in Italy, and all over the world. And it got so much traction that at some point, someone texted me on just DM. It's like, hey, I'm watching this Chinese soap opera and I can see your work there. I was like, this sounds like spam, first of all. And second of all, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. And that person told me the title of the Chinese soap opera. I found it to where to watch online, and on the right there is a video. So someone took my image here on the left that I took in Brooklyn, and then they used it exact same image, but they redid the person using AI because you can see how poorly that person looks here in the scene. So they kind of AI'd just the person. And the reality is that it's on a wallpaper of this phone. But the funny thing is that it's not shown twice. This image is being shown. So this girl gets 500 text messages per episode. Every single time she gets a text message, there is my picture. Episode one, episode two. I don't know. I didn't watch any further, but I get the idea. And then if a tool doesn't exist, you can create it. No permission needed. So this kind of long thing where one thing affects the other, it just leads me to different experimentations. Now, at some point, I wanted to try this new hot topic, which is called vibe coding. I don't have any coding experience. I used to know how to code. I have some basic HTML and CSS knowledge, but I cannot make an iOS app. So I decided, well, can I maybe recreate some of that visual experience by building an app? And last year I ended up making my own iOS app it's a camera that updates the scene live. And so I can look at everything and I can snap these images that look kind of abstract. It doesn't have that element that's being cut out. It's just basically to create this abstract, beautiful photography that looks kind of cool. And again, this app is not launched. It's just something that I only have on my phone. And I know that, when I want, I can take my phone and snap a picture like that. So here are my obsessions, the architecture, photography, design, and my obsession with time. Remember, I told you that I even designed the watch, just 500 pieces of one watch. And this is the project that basically I inject my own obsessions every time something doesn't work, and it makes a pivot into something else. So, in order to make personal projects, you have to embrace your obsessions. Just figure out what you like the most and start experimenting with it. Don't look at what others like. It doesn't matter, honestly. It's so irrelevant and so boring. Just only think about what you like and embrace your obsessions and do that stuff. Believe me, there are going to be some people somewhere in some weird corners of the world that are also going to love the stuff that you do. The second chapter here is all about just kind of looking back at what you do and trying to find patterns. Some projects are discovered by looking at patterns. The pattern becomes the project, and the project makes it legible to others. At the very beginning, I told you that I always carry a camera with me and I always take pictures. Now, every time I take pictures, I import them into Lightroom and they just live there in Lightroom. last year, or maybe a year before, for the first time ever, I decided to kind of go back into my archive and kind of relook at some folders because I was looking for something. And without realizing, I noticed that there are very particular themes in the things that I take pictures of. For example, somehow I take way too many pictures of people running on the street. When somebody runs, I just take a picture of them. Why not? When I take pictures in of like flowers or take pictures of airplanes a lot or take pictures of light beam, which I'm going to talk about. So I started organizing them into folders. I never planned that. I just realized that, well, every time something happens, I always take a picture of it, and I already have a lot of them. So the first folder, and that's how it started, was called Lightbeam. And I essentially started collecting images, which I realized I always take pictures of people appearing in a beam of light somewhere in the street. It almost reminds me of a theater. It's almost like the lights are off and there's this light beam just pointing at something, and then I can get cool pictures. And as I was going through Lightroom, I found up nearly 200 or 300 images following that particular theme. So I kind of collected them. I only selected the best 30 or 40 images. And again, I did use Readymag to build the project. So I put everything together and I designed this short kind of image gallery. I'm gonna remove the sound. I mean, I'm not proud of this. It's just image slider. Who cares? But it basically led me to other things that I did. So the other one that I've been working on more last year and this year is called Form and Field. One thing I realized is that I take pictures of interesting compositions that I just come across while walking around. Here's a payphone on the streets of Bangkok. I think this is the most beautiful payphone I have ever seen in my life. And it's so beautiful that I took a picture of it. And as I'm walking in Tokyo, I also took another picture of a very, very beautiful scene, which is just a parking lot. But the combinations of color and the composition that the whole thing creates is amazing. So I'm drawn to those things while I walk around without realizing them. And only last year, when I'm browsing my folders, I realized, you know what? What if I place these images next to each other? It's almost like it's one word and another word, and now they form a sentence. Now it's something new, like by themselves is just one photograph, and there is a photograph of a parking lot, but together, it's not that they're telling a story, it's that now they're together create something new that didn't exist before. There's a car, somebody put the car to bed in Barcelona. Looks very cute. There's another car. Somebody put to bed another car in Kyoto in Japan. And the moment I place these two images together, it's almost like, brother and sister found each other. Now they kind of belong together in one universe. There is a ladder in New York. Like I'm walking around, I can see somebody left a beautiful red ladder. And I'm also walking in Barcelona Gracia, and I see someone also left a beautiful red ladder. So these two cousins from Barcelona and from New York now finally found each other, and they belong together. Again, I'm not sure who needs it, but I really do. So I have this massive Figma file in which I export all these random images. And there are evenings when I sit down and I try to find this very nice, beautiful pair where I can put them together and it kind of tells a new story. It kind of forms something new and something interesting. There's also quite a lot of process of retouching again. I love cleaning up images. It's one of the most boring pictures I took in Japan. It's a corner of a street, but it does look beautiful. And if I just remove the car, the whole thing starts to be very, very nice. And then I can pair it with another corner, which I took in Brooklyn in New York. Like it's in Red Hook around the IKEA. And that kind of formed another project, which I called Form and Field, which is essentially just putting together these compositions together and showing them as something new. And they're all from different various locations. Most of them were taken without me knowing that this project existed. I just found these images in my own libraries. Now, being fully aware of it, I take pictures deliberately when I see, oh, I know like this corner in New York that I saw this weekend is gonna match very nicely with this image that I already selected. But up until then, when I did launch the project, they were completely random. So it's something I just found in my Lightroom folder. And images are images. They always need home. They need a presentation. So I did this project. All right. And again, one thing leads to another. It's just nice to pay attention to the stuff that you do and see where you can experiment. For example, I launched this project, Form and Field, in the fall of last year, 2025. This January, I was in Tokyo and I went to the Tokyo Art Book Fair. I always go to art book fairs. Every time they're in New York, I'm always there because that's where you can see, the coolest books that your regular bookshop doesn't carry. And there was this one publisher called, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Rondade. It's a Japanese publisher that makes most of their books using stuff that you can buy at a regular store, at a CVS, like different like folders, like staples, putting things together that it actually looks like like you're planning something, like you're planning a trip back in the day before the internet. And when I saw it, I was like, wow, somebody's making books like that. I can make books like this. So when I got back to New York, I bought tons of different stationery. I bought different like stock of paper. I bought like different pockets. I bought this punch hole puncher, and I started making a book using that same images. Here you can see some of the images of the process. It's just basically me in the evening sitting down printing. I don't have a big good printer. My printer, I have a little Canon printer, which is this big, and it can only print small images, which I'm printing here. But then I'm kind of cutting them out. I'm putting them in folders. I'm punching holes and I'm moving this whole thing around. And about a week of just doing it in the evening, I ended up with this beautiful book, which is also, it only exists as one piece. Took me a week to make. I don't remember where I bought all the different papers, so I cannot recreate this book ever. So if I were to ever make it a new one, it's gonna look different. It's not gonna look identical. And there was one thing that's very beautiful here at the end, is that when I punched all the holes to put this paper together, and then I was cleaning my hole puncher, I noticed that I have all this confetti that looked way too beautiful to throw out. So I started taking pictures of it. And I still didn't want to throw it out, so I decided to include it into the book on the very last page. So I took another sort of the plastic sleeve, and then I used tape here so it doesn't go out. And on the very last page, I have a micro page that says the whole sponge to make this book. And then the very last project here is people look at art. Another thing that I also realized by looking at my Lightroom folder is that every time I go to the museum, and I always go to museums, whether in New York or when I travel, I always go to galleries, especially the free ones. And I'm obsessed with taking photographs of people looking at art. So sometimes I find it even more interesting than the art itself. And I ended up with a large, I think it's about also 200 or 300 images. And I ended up selecting the best ones. This is the one in Whitney. There's the one in gallery in New York. Here's a man looking at Rothko in San Francisco, MoMA. And I have so many of these images, and there's always this interesting moment of I don't know what these people experience when they look at art because I'm standing behind them. Like, but I know they're experiencing something. They didn't pass by, the piece of art. They stand there and they observe and they, generate feelings right now by looking at it. Maybe they hate it, maybe they love it, maybe they're trying to maybe it reminds them of something that happened in their life. It's a very, very personal and emotional thing, I think. And I ended up capturing the emotion without actually revealing the emotion because you don't see the face. And I collected all these images together in Lightroom. And again, they need home. This project is just the fact that I have this folder doesn't mean anything. It needs to leave my computer and be out there in the wild to become a project so others can also look at it. I decided to design and spend a little bit more time designing this project. So you can see here, I'm trying to find an art direction to how I would frame this entire thing. And the art direction that I'm going for is this sort of very dry, almost ticket-like vibe. So when I go to the museum and I get a ticket, how does the ticket looks like? It's always this pixelated typeface. It's always white. It's always monochrome. So I'm trying to kind of recreate that same feeling here. And then building it in Readymag, just using all the default features that are there. And at some point I did this. So here's a Wolfgang Tillmans exhibition in MoMA. And as I scroll through the project, the image kind of zooms out, revealing the name of the artist on the left and revealing the location on the right. The reality is that it's cool, but it's not cool. It's not cool because the website is also part of the experience. It's not just a container for photos. Remember I said about the first one, about the Lightbeam project. It just looks like a slideshow of images. It does. And for this one, I needed something else. And I spent a lot of time thinking what this is. And one day I realized this is Barcelona again. And I'm capturing this video of myself as a shadow on a white wall. Because the idea I have is that I need to bring myself into this project, but it also in a very abstract way. Not that my face is like hanging around there, so I take this video and I bring it to Photoshop. I increase the contrast, the levels, so it's just complete black and white. And then I cut it out completely and export every single frame with transparency as a PNG. And then I bring this frame into Readymag again with this, I don't remember how this feature is called, the sequence, where you can put a sequence of PNGs and turn them into motion and apply on scroll or by default. And this is the final project. So when I scroll, I'm introducing the project. So when I'm scrolling, there is this shadow moving behind the subject and looking at the piece of artwork. So I'm adding myself at the third layer of this experience. So layer number one is the artwork itself. Layer number two is the most important layer. That's the subject that's looking at art. And the layer number three is just a shadow of me, is my presence of also being there and kind of walking by and capturing that particular moment. So looking back through the archive, recognizing patterns and realizing a project was there. I just didn't see it. So take a look at your iPhone gallery. I can guarantee all of you will find some kind of obsession there. It's something that you photograph without you knowing that you're drawn to something like that. And maybe that can also become a project. It doesn't need to be an image gallery. It can be anything you want. So I'm going to finish this talk by saying what my peers say. By peers, I mean designers of my own age, because I started designing early in 2000s, and I worked with a lot of designers who are around my age. And there's this notion that we kind of sometimes keep coming back to. People love saying the web used to be wilder. It's true. Web used to be wilder to a degree. There's a quote from Koivin. Most of web design today is really boring. It's also true. But the web used to be wild, but it was very, very hard to build. You needed to have development skills to actually build something. As a designer, you couldn't just build anything. Nothing was accessible. You couldn't play back videos. In my opinion, today, you have much more opportunities to make crazy stuff online than back in 2005. Believe me, we have much better tools today, much quicker tools. You can actually have zero coding knowledge and make something insane. So the only way the web gets less boring if more designers use it to make work for that no one asked for. So there is no design police. Like nobody stops us from making crazy internet today. It's just we choose not to because we have every single tool under the sun available to us to make the craziest shit your brain can imagine. And I collect that stuff. I collect websites that are insane. I love them. I every time I see one, I'm actually recording a video because I know that site is going to be dead next year because the person who built it did not extend the URL and it's just a broken URL. So there are websites, there's this someone who lives in Netherlands, they love rocks. They every time they go for a walk, they take a picture of a rock and then they put it on this website. And then the website is a library of every rock that they found connected to the geolocation. There is a website which is, I don't know, using Google spreadsheet as a portfolio or a website with crazy animations. And that is beautiful that someone does it. It doesn't matter whether many people see this or not. It matters that someone does it and it's there and it exists. So I want to leave you with this thought by Bruno Munari, the Italian designer. He once said that other artists instead are curious by nature. They investigate, they experiment, and they're satisfied only when they're the first to venture into the unexpected zones where no one has been before, or where everyone had been without seeing anything. So it was this quote that I read about 10 years ago is always with me. It's as a designer, yes, I do a lot of client work where I solve problems, where I measure things, where I work with teams and developers, where I can make something that works. Absolutely, yes. But also, there's another part of me as a designer is that I'm not satisfied until I find something that nobody has seen before. There's this kind of, as Bruno Munari said, it's like I'm satisfied only when I'm the first somewhere in the zone that nobody has ever been. Or maybe everybody has been in that zone, but they haven't seen what I see. Because otherwise, we end up with stuff like that. A former Facebook employee said, "The best minds of my generation are thinking about how to make people click more ads." And it's always funny that these quotes come from former Facebook employees. Thank you.
Wow. Anton, thank you so much. I think this was one of the coolest, one of the most inspiring talks I've ever heard. And I'm really
All
happy that
right.
we're and
That's
I'm
a low
really
bar.
happy. Not at all, not at all. Like the other most inspiring talk for me is by Steve Jobs that he gave in Stanford. So this one is like really like it came really close to that one. And I'm really happy that we're recording this meeting because I'm definitely going to be rewatching this. And I'm
All
not a
right. Thank
designer
you.
myself, but you gave me such a huge boost of inspiration to just go and try to create and to find my own obsession. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
Um, we don't have that much time, so I guess let's start the Q&A. Just 1 second. Mhm. So if someone wants to ask the question directly, can you please try to click react and choose raise hand so we can see if it actually works. Hi, Jonah. Hi,
Hi,
sorry.
hi, Mary. Hi, Anton. Thanks for sharing. Super inspiring.
Hi.
I've been inspired by your work for about a decade when I was studying. Yeah. So this question, I heard you talk about the sequence of building client work and also the work for yourself. I think one of the main struggle that I'm going through right now is how do you go about balancing the client work and then to have that amount of income to really support the personal work, because I guess when you do personal work, it's really hard to context switch to commercial client work, right? Yeah.
All right, thanks. I mean, honestly, we have the same amount of time. I mean, some more, some less. The reality is that if I have client work, I'm focusing on client work because I need to pay rent. I need to pay my health insurance, which is all fucked up in the United States. I need to buy food, which is expensive here in New York. So client work, I just do client work. But the reality is that if I do client work for every single day for a week, I feel exhausted. If I do client work throughout the day and I'm not going to work late for the client because client is not paying me to work late. Client is paying me for the time that I'm allocating it to work with the client. There's always a time for me early in the morning before work or after work in the evening. My best time is weekends, early morning. Like I love sitting down and spending time on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, in the morning before lunch. That's when I can design a lot and then I can chill the rest of the weekend and just hang out. So I always try to find time just to do a little bit of everything.
Mm. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Um, if anyone else wants to ask the question, if you don't feel comfortable asking it directly, you can drop the questions in the chat. Um, I can see the question. 1 second. Is there any other physical objects you would like to design, like Nora watch?
Oof, that's a good one. I would love to, but I would never do it by myself anymore because that's a suicide mission. Um, you cannot imagine how much shit I got by doing this watch. There were two companies that were trying to sue us as a studio for trying to release this watch. We had to hire lawyers. I had to work with factories. We honestly, at some point, we spent more money on lawyers than on manufacturing a watch. We at some point we compensated, so we sold enough watch that we didn't lose any money. And there are only two good things happen from making a watch. One, I have it. I don't care if you have it, I have it. I wear it. It's been for a while, and I don't know if you can see on a camera. As long as I have it, I'm happy. The other one is that MoMA Museum in New York, they actually were selling the watch, which is a huge achievement. Just to have a physical object, and I've done only one physical object, not counting the book. The fact that it was at MoMA store, like every time I would be walking past MoMA store in New York, I would always go in just to look at my watch. I think people were thinking I'm crazy, I'm trying to steal stuff, but every time I was there, a regular customer, not buying anything. So making your own physical products are insanely hard. There's so much legal stuff going in there. There's so many patents. There's so much stuff you have to be aware. I would love to make more physical work, but not by myself. If someone hires me or somebody just, buys idea from me and they manufacture it. But I wouldn't don't want to go into this whole process of making a physical thing myself. It's really, really hard and time consuming and very expensive.
But it's such a flex to have your product presented at MoMA.
Well, I'm not sure if it was worth it, sure.
We have another question from Nitya. Nitya, can you?
Hi,
Yeah,
am I audible?
yes,
Hi,
we can hear you.
okay.
Yes.
So I am basically from India, from New Delhi, India, and I think I'm attending anything of this sort for the first time, and I'm glad this was my first opportunity of attending something like this. So like how I feel like your journey is more like photography design, and like that's like your process. Like I was a painter since childhood, so like for me, like I was an artist first, painting, doing my own things, not restricted by any so-called rules of designs, not interrupted by clients. And then I entered this world of ad agency, graphic designing. And like I as a person am like really sensitive and emotional, and I like to think from my heart. But when you enter the corporate industry, you really struggle in terms of selling a work to like a non-creative, non-designer person like the client. So like what is your process of like do you attach yourself from your work, or like if you don't attach yourself from work, how do you like build it as a baby? And then like if you have invested so much emotions, how do you try to sell out your work to the clients? How do you make peace when it gets rejected but at your heart you love it? Like how do you balance all these things?
All right, thanks for the question. That's a big one. By the way, India, New Delhi, that's when I had my internship as an architect. To
Oh,
be
okay.
honest, that's when I decided I don't want to be an architect.
Oh my god, like seeing Qutub Minar in Red Fort didn't convince.
That was my 3 months living in India. Anyway, that's a very big question. And there are kind of multiple questions. One is doing personal work, doing experiments, and trying to squeeze them into client work. I always do this. Big thing, don't tell they come from your personal work. Just lie. Like, do you think when I was selling that building idea to a development company, I said I designed that comic in 3D? Of course not. That would be insane. That would make it feel like I'm pushing my own agenda. In reality, I am pushing my own agenda, but I'm selling it to them with a totally different set of words. You're a development company, it's a building, we're adding floors. Like, I'm not saying that stuff. I'm using everything that I do in terms of crazy projects. I inject them into my client work, but I never say they come from my crazy projects. I come up with a totally different narrative to sell it. So everybody gets the idea. I cannot just show up there as an artist and say, hey, you need this, this, and that. So use it, use your personal ideas, just don't present them as they are kind of from your personal thing. But also you have to be okay if people say no, if they don't like it. And then you always have an alternative for that. The reality is that, believe me, so many clients want something fun and crazy, but they will never tell you this because it's not the wording that you put in a brief. Every single client dreams to have a project that people find not only useful but also engaging and fun and unexpected and interesting. Just nobody knows how to do it. Nobody knows how to describe it. So usually when you get the brief, everything is described in a very dry way. So the reality is that as long as you do the foundation, whatever the brief asks, you have. And then you build all these layers on top to make this thing more fun, more interesting, more engaging. Honestly, more than half of the time, clients say yes to that. They didn't ask for it, but the moment they see it's something fun and interesting, it's like they will say yes. Always worth a shot.
I'm seeing some really nice questions in the chat. For example, Sophie is asking, what advice do you have for very baby designers, especially in regards to learning softwares and skills that may have a high buy-in cost?
Advice for designers, skills that may help. Oh, I mean, that's a hard one. I mean, there's so many skills you can learn, and again, depending on the different designer, you can ask, like I ask 100 designers, and 10 will say the most important skill is how you present. The other 10 will say the most important skill is to also know how to code. Another 10 will say the most important skill is to know how to play a management game within the large organization. Honestly, pick what you want more. There are certain skills I don't have. I suck at them. Like I'm bad at writing. I'm horrible. I'm not good at so many different things, and I choose not to improve on them because I would rather invest my time in improving 3D because, me, I find it more fun, or photography or something else. I can't give you exact direction. Choose what you want to do and then focus on improving those skills. And then some skills that you are really bad at, just collaborate with people who are really good at the skills that you are bad at. That's pretty much it.
Uh, I think we have a little bit time to maybe for one or maybe two more questions. And I see that one, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name, the nickname, Juan Gog is saying, I'm curious about your decision to use Readymag for your creative work. More generally, how do you think about choosing creative tools? In what ways do they shape your process, and do you feel they influence the work itself?
That's a good one. Tools influence the work more in a bad way than in a good way, unfortunately. Um, the problem with tools in general is their limitations. And so many times, what happens is that the limitations that the tools have form your work. And that's a very dangerous thing to be in. So you have to be always be very aware. Are you designing it because you think this is right, or you're designing it like that's because that's how the tool is built for me to do it? Figma is a good example. I teach at the university. The worst thing that students can do when they think about putting together a layout is to use this feature called auto layout. Auto layout is a killer of any idea. First, think spatially and visually, and only then lock things into auto layout once you finally found the composition, once you're there. So every single tool, and Readymag is not an exception here, but that's not the only one. They have their own set of limitation. So a lot of times I have a project and I know that this and this and this tool is not going to work for it, but I can use that tool which doesn't limit it. And there's some projects I do, it's like, okay, other tools have limitations, but the Readymag is the perfect one for it. So I'm going to use Readymag for it. And in order to do that, you always have to keep testing out different tools. Like whatever comes out, just, create an account, play it out, understand its limitation. That's exactly what I'm doing with Spline building 3D. That's exactly what I'm doing with all these other tools that I'm testing out. So I have this tools, a set of tools, and then depending on the idea, then I choose the tool I will use because I know it will allow me to do exactly that.
Thank you, Anton. Um, and I feel like this is a very fun question as well. I noticed a pattern with designers who studied architecture. They usually are amazing at visual design too. I'm curious, what does it enable in them? And what's your take on different design educations?
I have no idea. I'm not confident that every architect is a great designer. I've seen some pretty shitty ones. I don't think that's a rule. If you study architecture, you're somehow going to be good at design. I don't think so. I think there are some architects who are really good designers. There are some architects who have no idea what looks good and what doesn't look good. So I don't know. I have no answer.
Okay. Mhm. And also another nice question from Sophie. What books have earned their spot on your shelf? Are they mainly design inspo back there or a greater variety?
Oh, they're mostly, well, design, fashion, architecture. There are no books to read. I read books on Kindle. Like I don't need a book on my shelf, something that I can read on a screen. Like, because I don't reread the same book. It's like I don't care. I will always buy a book on a Kindle and read it on a Kindle. Sorry, everything on the shelf there is design, architecture, fashion, a lot of Japanese design. That's my favorite set of designers. The Japanese design from the 70s and 80s, the graphic designers. Yeah, but there's just something that also I could buy way more books. Like I need to make sure that the book is that I like it, that it needs to be well designed. There are so many books of artists whom I like, and I would like to have a book, but the book is poorly designed. It just doesn't look nice. It's like kind of ugly. Like I don't want to have it on my shelf. So I'm very careful about buying and collecting books.
Aesthetics matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm afraid we are running out of time. Thank you so much, Anton, once again for this incredible talk. It was wow.
Thank you so much.
As a thank you for joining, we'd like to share also a promo code for 1 month free to any plan. The promo code name is 9 July 2026, and it's valid until July 31st. So if you're inspired to create your next passion project, this is the promo code to use. Thank you once again so much. It was
Thank
really nice
you.
having you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you, everyone.